Welcome to Sports Geek Q&A. Here's your host, Sean Callanan.
Yes, I'm Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. Remember, you can send in your questions these ways. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/questions. You can send me a tweet at Sean Callanan. You can even ask me via Instagram at Sean Callanan. You can send me an email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Don't forget, you can support our podcasting and newsletter efforts via Patreon, going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. So this question came from our Sports Biz Melb March meetup because it was the biggest question in the room. So we're hosting Sports Biz Melb networking events in Melbourne every single month. We have done 3 so far this year. It's been one of my missions to do it more often. And the question was, how should sports react to coronavirus? So for full context and of when this discussion was happening and when I'm recording this, because a lot will change between when I'm recording right now and when you listen to this on potentially Friday, March 20. So I'm recording this the day after the NBA suspended the season. A lot of tournaments and have now suspended their seasons. And this morning, the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled. So the first question was to play or not play. And I think it makes perfect sense to move into the not play space, especially and it's primarily maintaining security and health of the fans. So everything the current advice is when there's a large gathering of people, that helps as far as spread. So I think the NBA, the NHL, the NCAA, the Grand Prix are all making the right decisions on this case. And I think we'll probably see more by the time this gets published. So I think the thing is, it should be care for the fans, care for the players. It's something that we're currently facing and challenged with Gravitas on having the guys go into a studio, making sure it's safe for them, making sure it's safe for them to travel to the studio and the like. You want to make sure that the players are protected in this instance. Then I think longer term, I think it will come down to there's a couple of things. How does digital play a part in informing fans about what is happening, what potentially will happen in the future? But then also, I think there's also a bigger picture play, and I do liken it to going to the World Cup T20. So last Sunday, I was at the women's cricket World Cup final, T20 World Cup final, the MCG, 86,000 people there. There was talk of the coronavirus being a concern, but the event went ahead. And I enjoyed the event. I thought it was a great event. I think if I have a criticism or something that they could have done, is done some public service announcements around what good behaviour and good hygiene behaviour and what good crowd behaviour is. So whether that's a simple PSA that says if you're going to cough into your arm, or use a hanky, or wash your hands, all of those kind of things, the messaging that we are currently getting out, I think sport can play a part. Similarly to how AS Roma have used their social platforms to amplify the stories of missing children, I think there's potentially an opportunity for sports to help get the message out around what is, good behaviour and safe behaviour and good hygiene in this time. But I also think there is also some real long-term concerns, and we need to look at how digital can keep the conversation going with teams and fans if there is long layoffs. So what do digital teams do with no content? How do you tell a story if there is restrictions around who is attending the event? Those kind of things. So there's still a lot to be played out. I do feel for everyone that is affected by this, and hopefully, again, fingers crossed, touch wood, all of those things. In 4 to 6 weeks, things start returning to normal, and we can hope that happens. But it is a little bit of wait and see. But I think erring on the side of caution does make sense. So getting back into the more normal questions, because I am not a doctor. This question comes from Ben Scully from Sports Where I Am. He sent in a question regarding how do you manage the positive, negative feedback. And so I'll read his question first because it's really well thought out. And thank you very much for sending it in, Ben. Hey, mate, I'm interested in how sports brands would manage the balance between focusing on too much negative feedback versus seeing as an early indication of a trend that might need to be addressed. I don't know how to word it better than, but a small example would be 99% positive and encouraging on most of the platforms and most of the ads. But occasionally we'll get someone that either doesn't quite understand us, doesn't quite understand our messaging, and then weighs in with a whole bunch of potentially incorrect. And the situation is, and I'm paraphrasing Ben, so I've gone off script. And he was asking for examples of how sports teams handle a higher volume of negative comments and how that balance. So I did answer this a couple of episodes back around there is going to potentially be this lockdown of accounts or lockdown of social comments because there is a little bit of trolling happening in the fan piece. But there is a little bit of you've got to be careful to listen to the small minority of those negative comments. I think if you're talking about a brand as different from a team, there are opportunities there. You can literally just hide the comment, which restricts it from being seen by other people. It is a little bit putting the head in the sand to a certain degree, potentially. But if it's literally just a troll, then hiding the comment or even deleting the comment or banning that person, to me, makes perfect sense. But if there is a way to turn around that person, if they are misinformed, then I think there is a good value in doing that. And I have seen cases, and one is an example. We were working with the stadium when they opened up, and they had a new stadium, and unfortunately, one of the rows in the stadium was mislabeled, and so there was a whole row in the stand that didn't actually exist, but there was 10 people standing there with tickets for that row that didn't exist. So they all had to be moved, and so a lot of that conversation happened on social media, happened on Twitter. Hey, stadium, we need to be moved. And so they were all moved. They were all put in different positions. That was all fine. Unfortunately, one of the noisiest ones happened to be sitting in a really poor position. They were sitting behind a camera, had an obstructive view, which again got them to kick off again. Now, they didn't really have a large following, and we could have probably ignored it. But what we did was we alerted the staff at the stadium and again moved them again, showed that that we cared and that we responded. And by the second, third, and fourth day of the test match, it was cricket in this case, they were one of the biggest advocates for the stadium. So we turned that negative, brand ambassador around to a positive one because we took those extra steps. So that one is a hard one to scale, but you still want to be looking for those opportunities to turn those around. There's now, and then the other side of it is some people never want to be turned. So I don't know if I've given you an exact answer to that, Ben, but it is a bit of managing it where you can, trying to identify and sort of having your own little flow chart. Is this just a troll? Yes. Then just delete or hide or ban. Is this a genuine concern? Yes. We will respond to it and try to rectify it. Is this a continuing concern? Then we need to improve our process or we need to update our FAQs and that kind of stuff. So I think that's the main thing that you want to do. I do think, monitoring feedback and comments on your ads is really important. I've seen a lot of ads that are running really out there in the wild with people saying all kinds of things on the ads. I think leaving that unattended is really poor, both customer service and just really poor for your brand. So hopefully that answers your question, Ben, and I guess we'll catch up for coffee to find out if it actually has. The last question is from Glenn Mills. He sent in via the website. Thank you very much, Glenn. He says, "Hi, Sean. As a sports nut, I made the decision to drop Foxtel and switch to Kayo as a streaming service." But he says, "But I'm sure you found buffering and freezing a nightmare and destroys any viewing pleasure. Is there a solution? Will we see the quality of streaming anytime soon? Keep up the good work." Well, first of all, thanks, Glenn. I think in this case, this is a case of Australian internet. more so than KO as a streaming product. So I think this is more about the capacity of the internet you have at home than KO as a product. I've found KO to be quite a good product, and it's a bit an indictment on streaming products overall, especially in the Australian market, that there's a pleasant surprise that you opened it up and it worked when we have had some real failed and botched streaming services. So I think the product works. I think it still has some improvements to be made. I think search can be a little bit better. But as far as freezing and buffering, I find that across multiple streaming services, particularly around hype and peak times. So what normally happens is 7 to 8 to 9 o'clock is when everyone is streaming. So it's not that just the streaming service is suffering. It's actually the pipes. The Australian internet, as we know, is going to be under even more stress right now with more people working from home. But a lot of people are streaming at peak times, at night, and that's when you see those services start to suffer. So I don't think it's a KO problem. I think it's an internet problem. So hopefully the advent of 5G starts to open up some opportunities there. And hopefully, it'd be great when we finally get the internet in Australia and we have. I say that as a joke often, but it's a poor one because if we had quality internet, I think we'd be able to do some really amazing things. That's it for this episode of Q&A. Thank you very much for the questions. For those of you at Sports Biz Mel, Ben Scully, and also Glenn Mills, thank you very much. As always, you can ask your questions via sportsgeekhq.com/questions or send them to me via my social channels or via email, Sean@sportsgeekhq. And I'd love your support on Patreon. So go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon to pledge your monthly support. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
You can reach Sean Callanan via email at sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Find out more about Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process at digitaltodollars.com.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.